Scout. He has a gun. Stunning revelation, I know. It took you 3 months to say that? Scout's typical game plan of run in, land some meat shots, run out has always made him formidable on the offensive front. But switch over to man vs. machine and you'll quickly realize that nothing freezes a trigger finger faster than metalizing a player model. Historically speaking, man vs. machine has always shifted Scout away from a pure damage dealer and more towards a support class. Collecting money, redirecting aggro, applying debuffs, giving the Scout another chainsaw to juggle just isn't worth it for the vast majority of people. As a result, new Scout players are discouraged from buying damage upgrades on their scattergun in favor of resistances and extra mobility, as they are what enhance his ability to perform his support roles. However, in recent years, there's been kind of a counterculture brewing. A lot of high tours have found themselves rejecting the idea that defensive upgrades are the way to go, and that newer players should learn how to maximize their damage first and foremost. Personally, I've always maintained that this is incredibly shitty advice to give to a fresh out of boot camp low tour Larry, but who knows, maybe I'm out of touch nowadays. So I figured it'd be fun to do a little bit of an experiment, to answer once and for all, does anyone actually care about the Scout's damage output? Well, how about we find out? We'll be playing Scout all day, every day, without doing a single point of damage until we find a group of players who want to kick us from the game. That means no shooting, no fan of war markings, even shortstop shoving is off the table. We can chase the bread and throw the milk, but all the meat's off the bone. We're now a 100% pacifist class in a game mode that demands anything but. As the challenge goes on, I'll do my best to make myself as attractive a vote kick target as possible, though every infraction must primarily relate to our damageless qualifier. That means no going AFK, no purposefully avoiding money, no insulting my teammates, no breaking picket lines with furry bait, all that kind of stuff. And with all that said, let's close the book on this topic once and for all. Does literally anybody care about the Scout's damage output? Let's find out. We're starting off this challenge with no gimmicks, no handicaps, just how I personally would play a wonderful round of man vs. machine.
Easy, I jerk off to your videos.
That's not the first time I've heard that. Okay, so obviously going in without an alias kinda mutates the premise of the experiment, but I figured we get at least one tour in to really test the limits of how much people care. We're also gonna be running the atomizer full time, seeing as marking is off the table. The triple jump is the best non-damaging passive upside among all the melee weapons, and in tandem with the jump height upgrade, it's about as close to no clipping around the map as you're going to get. But even despite all of this mobility, you really don't know what you have until it's gone. Scout's ease of movement and consistently high survivability often leave him as the last line of defense against bomb runners. And under normal circumstances, Scout can finish them off single-handedly. Per the rules of this challenge though, we can't do that, making us entirely reliant on our team to fall back and chase anything that falls through our defenses. It wasn't too bad starting out, but this may or may not become a recurring theme going forward. And you know what else is a recurring theme? Boredom. This shit is fucking boring. I can't even do the basic Janny work of cleaning up the incapacitated bots after a point cap, let alone a boss robot walking around with no pants, just begging for someone to shove a full clip straight up their ass. This, more than anything, was a test of discipline, the in-game equivalent of a cosmic brownie sitting on your desk. I needed to completely retrain my brain on what to prioritize with these new restrictions, and that mostly came in the form of being an aggro bitch. If any oncoming fire was headed to the vicinity of my teammates, it was my job to pick it up and drag it elsewhere. Other than that, we were able to find some pretty creative strategies on how to remove bots from the field without doing any damage, like getting into the sniper's melee aggro radius to let them chase me off a cliff, and running in front of the grenade demos to make them blow themselves up. But really, that's about it. And while holding the world's most intimidating paperweight wasn't exactly fun, the money and milk were enough to keep things running smoothly. We only had one wave failure across all 4 missions, the last wave of Bot Bash, which is why we're not switching classes on the last wave despite it being a meta staple. Having one less damage class at the end will hopefully draw more ire in my direction should things go awry. It may not have happened this tour, but we can easily write this off as me being the Banana Emperor and no one's gonna tell me I'm not wearing any clothes. After all, I am a TF2 YouTuber, we can get away with anything. So, we're done with all of that. Banana off, Chungus on. Let's keep moving. Okay, so rather than sit here in anguish and bitch about my self-imposed limitations, I wanted to learn early on just how to best maximize how effective we could really be. Sure, it's not like I can do much besides farm bags of money and provide some heal on hit, but that doesn't mean our hands are completely tied. This began one of the most important roles of the damageless scout. Doing nothing. This is body blocking, a strategy where you throw yourself in front of the robot's pathfinding to keep them locked in place, increasing the amount of uptime spent close to your team's optimal damage range. This strategy is usually performed by either a heavy or a wrangled sentry, as both of them have large hitboxes with very high levels of effective HP. And while Scout's more twinkish hitbox makes his positioning more precise, he's one of the best in the game at keeping bots from moving forward. Oftentimes, the Giants will take a while to even aggro onto the scout player in front of them, which is great. That's more time they spend not shooting the bouncer immobilizing them. And if they do eventually aggro, Scout's movement speed will let him get out of dodge if he ever feels threatened. I mean shit, even if they were to aggro, we have 90% resistance buffs and an infinite supply of overheal. Not like it'd do much anyways. With our current limitations, cosplaying an overly aggressive crossing guard became our MO, but unfortunately, it didn't do much to help us against our first major hurdle. Metro Malice. There are way too many crit pyros, jumping demo knights, small robots, and jumping scouts on the early mission waves, none of which are prime body blocking material for a class that has all the width of a cheese string. Because of this, we were pretty much entirely reliant on the rest of our team to keep the bomb in view. And man, that didn't go quite well. There were so many situations where even just a little bit more extra damage likely would have saved points from getting captured, or hell, even entire waves from being failed. Yet, despite all of that, not one player locked their eyes onto me. As far as my team was concerned, I was collecting all the money and milking the Giants, just doing my job. It didn't matter how many players went through the revolving door of in-progress cures, not one person stopped to ask why I wasn't doing any damage. Even my repeated attempts at shoving the tank on the Rottenberg missions or using them as parkour vehicles didn't raise any eyebrows. This to me raised questions. Surely anybody had to notice this, right? Well, maybe they did, but they felt uncomfortable pointing it out. See, high tours are often viewed with a heightened level of reverence within the MvM community. If you're questioning how a high tour is playing the game, a lot more people are inclined to believe that they themselves are the one missing something. I mean, clearly a guy who spent almost $2,000 on this one tour is bound to know what he's doing. Right? It's probably just one big misunderstanding. And even if it wasn't, we all know what can happen if you call out a high tour on their behavior.
Monkey pyro, fuck you, monkey pyro, fuck you.
Perhaps this is yet another case of players refusing to tell the Dark Emperor Chungus he too has no clothes, for you will feel the wrath of his 500 tour vote kick veto. I don't want this to happen. Thus, I'll relinquish my high tour privilege effective immediately. Alright, no more excuses. From here on out, I'll be using a fresh alt account without a tour to my name. And you know what? Maybe that's all we needed. Because literally, on my very first mission using this account, a high tour finally pointed out that I wasn't doing any damage. But we were 5 waves into the mission, and none of my low tour teammates seemed to really give a shit. So a vote kick was out of the question. That's another thing we need to keep in mind for this challenge. Low tour ignorance is both a blessing and a curse. New players are way less likely to notice or question why the scout isn't attacking anything, but at the same time, they're also much less likely to know the optimal strategies that could make up for a faltering player. For instance, this giant soldier on Empire Wave 2 ended up staying alive for 4 minutes straight. This was easily preventable. I sat around body blocking, doing fuck all every step of the way. One Fano War mark probably would have let us kill it in 10 10% of the time. But low tours? It's not like they know that, so I'm able to get away with a fair bit of incompetence. Whereas on a team with a high tour, they likely would have chastised me for keeping my gun shelved. This is the majority of the game, just oscillating between standing in place doing nothing against giants and becoming an aggro black hole against hordes of smaller robots. I can't even take the liberty of taunting on this new account because whoops, that does damage too. Again, I'm just fucking bored. If you see my cursor remaining stationary in any future clips, just assume I'm watching Gordon Ramsay carve a chicken on monitor 2. Distraction is the key to preservation. Well gee, isn't that a striking parallel? Over the past dozen missions, we've only had one guy publicly acknowledge that I wasn't doing any damage. Evidently, I gotta make myself more of an attention whore. To have any chance of getting kicked for my inadequacies, step one is making sure that people actually notice them. The first thing that came to my mind, weapon names. Similarly to casual, if you die in MvM, you'll be forced into spectating a fellow teammate. During this period, you can see all of their weapons, upgrades, and item nicknames. Ooh, we can be a little rascal with this one. Soda popper, no damage. Atomizer, no damage. Milk? Okay, in hindsight, I realized I forgot to rename this one, but 2 out of 3 should be good enough. Even added description tags for good measure. From here on out, any player who dies and ends up spectating me will immediately be shown a giant glaring notification saying that I'm doing fuck all offensively. We've also been running 2 cities this entire challenge, so I figured we'd change it up and go for a mecha run. And on Big Rock especially, we see a very interesting dynamic take shape. As you're all very much aware by now, the Big Rock missions can be effectively soloed by one good sniper player hugging a dispenser. Now, what's notable about Sniper is that he has an auto money pickup mechanic where no matter the kill, Sniper will immediately receive all of the credits dropped by the robots. Money will still drop upon kill, but it's only to give the scout more overheal to play with. Nothing more. So now, if I'm playing a Big Rock mission with a God Rock sniper, not only can I not shoot, not only can I not mark, but my money picking abilities have been rendered, if not obsolete, greatly diminished. At this point, I'm basically a fucking milkman, and only the almond variety. This is how Broken Parts went. I spent more time dancing around the map than I did actually helping our team. But our Bone Shaker mission ended up free of Idle Rock tyranny. This one had the same issue as our Metro mission during 2 cities though. A full team of new players. We ended up failing not 1, but 2 separate waves during the mission, and no one clued into the fact that I may or may not have somewhat enabled that to happen. Decoy had a few close calls, but to be honest, with how many engineers plague the map, maxing out bullet res and movement upgrades typically yields similar, if not better results than a packed primary anyways. Milking the Wave 4 Super Scouts will always be your go-to competence check on this mission, and the lower credit pool didn't amplify my futility more than normal. But it does segue into another problem with the Pacifist Scout that I've kinda glossed over so far. Beyond a certain point in the mission, there are 0 benefits to buying anything. Max movement speed is 600 credits. Max jump height, 300. Blast and bullet will drain you 900 each. Then 450 for fire, 450 for crit, and then another 1200 for full milk upgrades. Combined, that is 4,900 credits worth of potential utility, and past that point, there isn't much left to upgrade. The only other thing you have is max health regen, but you're always submerged in a marsh of overheal anyways, so that never really comes into play. Past that 4,900 number, all you can do is spam more ammo canteens for an instant milk recharge. But with max recharge rate on your milk, you get a new glass every 8 seconds anyways. And what's the duration of the Mad Milk's debuff? 10 seconds. I guess it's good for soaking multiple enemies at once on faraway segments of the map, but we're really stretching for anything here. On the Big Rock maps especially, this is a massive problem, because they give you more money to play with than any mission in the game. A high point of both maps now treated like a curse, because all that means is we're hitting the 1900 credit threshold much more quickly, leaving multiple waves worth of money on the table. Nonetheless, the conditions didn't really matter. Whether I was useless on a team that didn't need me, useless on a team that did need me, or useless on a mission that was much more lenient about it, not one call out was made. But in all fairness, we're still only on an advanced difficulty tour. Let's up the stakes a bit. Our first expert mission started off on Coal Town, and nothing happened. We had a full team of low tours, save for Booty Clapper 69, our 500 tour medic. He felt it prudent to tell the pyro to crouch while tank busting, but nothing on me having my main mode of damage dealing benched. Even after a wave failure, everyone's lips were still shut. Not a great start, but expert is rife with new players not knowing what's going on. We just need to shuffle the deck a bit more. We then ended up finding ourselves on a decoy mission with everyone stuck on the last wave. Does this count as cheating? Maybe a bit, but if there was any time I'd get admonished for doing no damage, it'd be me shoving myself onto a team that desperately needed more. But still, it didn't matter. Whether it's a full mission or one wave, not one player pointed out my 0 damage number or even asked me to switch to a new class, which would at least imply I'm a burden even if no one said it out loud. All of this happened after a Super Scout lost us the game, by the way, which I had complete autonomy in preventing. It looked like no one was going to even recognize that I was playing Damageless Scout in expert mode, let alone call out a little low tour Larry. But then, on Mission 18, my optimism grew. LJ, a top 50 MvM player by tour count, known for having the occasional dickish moments, joined into our game. We went the majority of the mission without any problems, so maybe my hope was for nothing. But all of that changed on Wave 4, where we finally got our second call-out of the challenge. My no-tour ass is looking like fresh meat for a righteous boot to the face, and it still didn't happen. No further comments, no attempted vote kick, no shit talk, no asking for a switch, just a quick and easy carry all the way to the end. This appears to be a case of same shit, different tour, but on expert specifically, it isn't as unexpected as one might think. My perception going in was that the higher difficulty would mean a bigger microscope on any performance issues, especially during failed waves, which are much more likely to happen on these 3 missions. However, the biggest cause for failure on the hardest expert waves has little to do with damage output, but much more in dealing with the torrent of Super Scouts making their way by. So being an overhealed 24/7 tar thrower, preventing them from progressing too far, I wouldn't call it exceptionally practical, but having your milk up as much as possible is a feature that saves more expert lobbies than any other tour. One of the 2 roles I'm pigeonholed into has had a substantial increase in impact, and as long as I'm fulfilling that duty alongside collecting the money, it doesn't seem like anyone's gonna complain. Can't shelve the milk either because that has nothing to do with our damage number. So, what to adjust? Well, the whole point of the alt account was to get more people to notice and subsequently point out that my primary is stuck in the vault. We can lean into that a bit more. Boom, the 0 damage scout. It's on the birth certificate. It doesn't get more obvious than that. Our first mission with our new alias began on the last wave of an Empire lobby with 2 high tour spies throwing the game repeatedly. Oh, this should be fun. They wanted to kick 2 of the other players on the team, and given they had player majority, I had to go along with it. But after that team pruning, one of the high tours asked me to go soldier, and for the next 30 seconds, I no hablo inglés. I played dumb while the timer ticked down just in case they decided to throw the game again, but they didn't and we wrapped up the mission in no time flat. After that, we cleared out both Rottenburg missions back to back. Once again, no one cared or brought up the fact that I was dealing 0 damage whatsoever. That all changed when we finally joined our last lobby of the tour, Metro Malice. I'm sensing a bit of theme with this mission especially. Early on, our lone observant high tour started pointing out the oddities in my playstyle. Ammo canteens on Scout? Interesting? Really? That's the interesting part? How about the fact I have my shoot button, like, unbounded? Ammo canteens aren't even uncommon on Scout. That's like the least weird part of my gameplay. What the fuck are you talking about? This high tour soldier player would later tell our sniper to fuck off and attempted to troll the lobby with a last minute mission restart before the wave ended. So evidently, not the most wholesome guy around. But still, no beef about my flat damage number. The worst insult he could throw my way was that I was an odd character. 22 missions in, and that's the worst thing I've heard so far. I wonder if that'll change. Okay, new plan. I'm going to become a child. An annoying, Child. Slower F4s, whacking between waves, random Lenny binds. I need to be just obnoxious enough to get noticed, but just not obnoxious enough for it to be the reason to get kicked. Hey, I'm just giving you all a taste of the old YouTuber experience. You try playing casual in a banana suit. But even on expert, where again, the stakes are technically higher, no one fucking cares. We failed wave 3 of Manworks. Not one call out. A player left during our Coal Town lobby, and some high tour joked about how we were down 2 players, not one. Still no call out. It didn't matter if they were Jake, the 1000 tour medic player wearing a burning team captain, or Jizz Guzzler 2009, the low tour pyro main. No one, no matter the amount of pestering, threw any negativity my way. What do I even try at this point? Do I just keep rolling the dice over and over and over again until we find some grouch whose Lucky Charms got pissed in that morning? Well, yeah, pretty much. But there are ways to increase our odds of that happening. At this point in time, the only players who jumped to point out my lack of damage were all high tour players. A variable we can control a fair bit more than we have been. So, that's what we're doing now. I'll only go into lobbies that have a sufficient amount of mid to high tour players. Anything else, we will leave. With this new filtering method, our odds should hopefully increase. I decided to queue for 2 cities, as that's the tour with the quickest queue times, letting us easily cycle in and out of lobbies to find the best ones. But after my 3rd re-queue, I finally encounter my first high tour, Opaquan. Wait a minute, I remember you. Or is their hatred of sandbagging so high that even a last wave pick is deemed unacceptable? I mean, come on guys. Hamlet, Wave 7, really? I never forget. As the story goes, Opaquan kicked me after I decided to do some trolldering on the last wave of Hamlet. Literally the easiest wave in the entire game. His disdain for playing non-optimally was so unbelievably high that he was unable to let even a couple of minutes of fun on a borderline unlosable wave skirt by unabated. Finally, we have our guy. My F4s were slow, I whacked him off between waves, and the Lenny binds were flying. And what happened? We finished the mission with no issues whatsoever. Okay, genuine question. How in the fuck am I supposed to get kicked? Like, to all the high tours out there waxing poetic about how, no guys, it's actually really important that the scout does damage. Is it? Is it really? Because evidently, nobody fucking cares. Even the biggest fun-hating goblins that infest the game mode cannot be bothered to throw one mean word my way. In my following game of Manhattan, I started brainstorming what could be done, grasping at any straws that came into my imagination. Then it hit me. Maybe it's the character? The zero damage scout kinda has the veneer of a shitty superhero, and maybe the player base finds that charming enough to laugh off. I think it's time we modify the persona. We need something with aura, something passive-aggressive, something an edgy 13-year-old would do after getting Twitter ratioed by a mentally ill furry. Ah, that'll do. From this point on, we're gonna just lightning round through these missions until we get to the good part, because I need to get out of here as fast as possible. Mission 28 was a game of Metro where nobody cared and we finished the mission. Next we got a Hamlet game with a high tour named Mr. Feisty, but the dude was anything but. After that, we got a bot bash game with Johnny Utah, a well-known high tour Harry who was recently labeled a toxic crybaby loser on his profile. And despite another comment claiming that he kicked a fellow MvM player for using a meme loadout, even he didn't give a shit and we finished the mission. Following that, we ran into a guy who recognized us from a prior tour. And even though I could have easily saved this decoy lobby from repeated ruin, they also kept me around anyways without one aspersion cast my way. Mission 33 took us back to Manhattan, where I was addressed by my tour rank as if I was in the fucking military. But the rest of our team decided to focus on more important matters. We failed the mission twice in a row, but all the finger pointing went towards our engineer. At least until our high tour said fuck it, shoved his cursor on that 6th character slot, and then went AFK. Wrapped up the mission with no other issues. After that, we got into a big rock game with an 80 tour sniper who let me AFK the whole time. And despite me literally being nothing more than a milk machine with feet, still no kick. Right after that, we joined yet another Manhattan lobby, which unfortunately broke apart right as a TacoBot member opted to join. And given his name history, that probably would have been our best shot at a late game kick. Oh well. We finished another decoy mission, nothing happened. We finished another Manhattan mission, nothing happened. We queued into another Rottenburg mission, but yet again, our team's engineer tanked all the social aggro by refusing to buy two-way teleporter. We finished the mission anyways because nothing ever happens. Or so I thought. Finally, on the 39th mission of this goddamn challenge, we got ourselves a prison break. Our savior, Thaumius, a very dedicated High Tour Harry. Toxicity comments left and right. A description box saying he refuses to queue with anyone who makes the mission harder. And the biggest golden carrot we could possibly find, proof that he kicks his fellow teammates on the last wave. Our time has officially come. I started whacking his face during downtime, purposefully kept the F4s cold, whipped Lenny back into shape as much as I could, and there it was. Wave 6. After dozens of hours of bullshit non-gameplay, we are now finally free. I said we are now finally free. Just kidding, we finished this one too. I'm done. I'm fucking done. I don't know if this counts as failing the challenge or beating it, but I'm not doing another part-time job's worth of playing Billy the Bat Holder. I am not convinced there is any gauntlet of high tours I could ever come across that would admonish me to any degree at this point. I'd have to encounter Mecha Hitler himself to even have a chance at a mean word. At this point, I'm just wrapping up all my tours. I finished my last Big Rock mission and someone gets an Aussie, not me. I finished my last Gear Grinder mission and another player gets an Aussie, also not me. And then I finish up my 2 cities mission and get a big fat 6 and 2. Yep, that sounds like me. 44 completed missions of 0 damage, over 200 player encounters, and nothing. Absolutely nothing. You could not pay anybody to give even half of a shit about this metric. The most toxic of high tours, the most oblivious of low tours, and everyone in between, not one vote kick was even attempted, let alone successful. I think this proves once and for all the conclusion that, frankly, was obvious the whole time. No one cares about the Scout's damage output. You'll find no shortage of compliments around getting an A+ every wave. No shortage of children in Africa jokes around missing $5. Meanwhile, I just spent half a fucking work week not firing a single bullet, and the worst pejorative sent my way was getting called a goofball. And that's in the MvM community, where high tours calling for you to get sodomized with a broom handle at the thought of buying knockback rage isn't all that uncommon. Like, please, if you're a high tour Harry telling new scout players to deck out their gun and damage upgrades at the behest of their survivability, tell me why. Because all I see is telling a group of already inexperienced players to invest resources away from the things people value and put them towards amplifying a metric that very clearly they don't. If you're someone who wants a newer MvM player to have the best experience possible, there's no world where you should be recommending the Damage Scout playstyle. Because Jesus tap dancing Christ, I don't know how much more evidence you need to see that people just do not care. And to be honest, I actually think the vast majority of people giving out this advice already know this. And the rationale is based purely on appealing to a contrarian counterculture. I flashed this meme at the beginning of the video, and to me, it really is an accurate portrayal. Oh, don't fall for the mainstream blue pill beta scout build. Come align yourself with the real scout players, the ones who actually know what's up. It's not about giving new players good advice. It's about flexing the fact that they know more than the average player to not give it, without a lick of regard for the fact that the Damage Scout Chalice is atop a very high skill floor that is not noob friendly. Because truthfully, they're right. A scout that maximizes their gun while still collecting all the money, milking, marking, and redirecting aggro will perform better than one who doesn't. That was proven several times in this challenge. You'll find zero disagreement with me there. But a new scout player does not know how to weave aggro. They don't know how to maximize money overheal. They don't know the most optimal positions for avoiding incoming fire. Pumping your gun with damage upgrades means less money for resistances or agility upgrades, which not only makes your milking, marking, and money collecting more difficult, but it also, ironically, lowers your damage. Because newsflash, you ain't attacking shit if you're dead. The milking, marking, and money collecting alone is enough rope to tie as a new player as is. If you actually care about getting new blood into the community, stop giving this advice. Players need to get the fundamentals down before turning themselves into a glass cannon. The Damage Scout is amazing. He has massive giant damage, some of the best tank damage in the game. He can one-shot uber medics, all while still benefiting the team with his traditional abilities. It's why Scout, for me, is a top 3 most fun class within the game mode. It's a level of push and pull that you don't get with any other class. When you finally maximize your proficiency in every other Scout domain, I highly recommend it. But you should play it for yourself. For your own enjoyment, your own feeling of satisfaction, not for anybody else. Because I think it's been adequately proven that really, nobody cares. Real quick before we go, on Thalmius' profile there ended up being a hot take section for Man vs. Machine, and that's kind of inspired me to do a part 2 for the bad MvM opinions video. So if you want a chance to be featured, just head over to my most recent community post and drop whatever hot takes you got. Other than that, I appreciate you all for sticking around so long, and more content will be coming soon. Twitter and Discord are in the description, and that's all I got. See ya.